Welcome to the Be Unstoppable in the Zone podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford and I'm your host. Be Unstoppable for me is all about helping you unlock your incredible human potential and for you to access your mind in a way that it works for you. And that's why I became an empowerment and firewalking instructor, running events where people participate in a way that reveals to them who they truly are without a shadow of a doubt, and therefore enabling people, you, to live the life that you want without any limitation. Each episode in this series has guests that I'm interviewing that have valuable gems and nuggets and perspectives that have served them in their life, and also lessons that they've learned. And I just thought it'd be great to get under the bonnet, so to speak, in the zone and listen to their journey and stories. And I hope in some way that you connect to some part, if not all. So I hope you enjoy this next episode. Good morning, lovely ones. I am jolly excited this morning to be chatting with Simon Middleton, who is the Growth Hub Delivery Manager for York and North Yorkshire for the LEP, Local Enterprise Partnership. And as usual, I like to have a little chat off air, and I've written down nuggets already, Simon. But before we begin, I just want to say, you must be the most popular man I've never met. Well, now have met. You were recommended to me by a dear friend, Michelle Mook, and who loves you. I hope that wasn't a secret. And and then I was speaking to another dear friend who I mentioned your name to, and she went, "Oh, I love him." So I want to start off by asking the question, why is this? I mean, it's becoming obvious to me, but why is it? Is it because you're splashing money around? Is it because you're handsome and charismatic? Is it because you're a good listener? Or all of the above? Why do you think it is? Because I think that's a unique quality.
It's really difficult, isn't it? And I think one of my characteristics, I really hope one of my characteristics is it's about being humble and humility, and that's one of the character traits that I enjoy in other people. So I think naturally find it quite difficult to accept praise, because I just think, well, I'm just being myself. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing what I do in my spare time. And if people find that inspiring, or it helps them out, then brilliant. But I don't see myself as being anything other than just a normal Yorkshire bloke, really. In the work world, yeah, our ambition is just to help people, and you've got to come from a place where you get something out of helping people, and I do. I've done a lot of voluntary stuff outside of work time, and I do get something out of giving a bit back. Now, does that make me any different? I don't think it does. I'm just a normal bloke, I think, who would like to try and make a little bit of a difference. And if I do make a difference, brilliant.
Well, I think we had a chat last week so that I could understand what all the fuss is about. And it was clear to me that what makes you, I don't know if it's different, but certainly special, is that I don't think there's any version of you than the one that we actually see. I don't get the feeling that you're trying to prove anything or defend anything or push anything, that you are naturally just yourself. And in our little chat, what was wonderful and inspiring was when I said, is there any subject you don't want me to go near? And you went, no, I'm an open book. Ask me whatever you like. And I'm even willing to learn something about myself from the conversation. And I think it's that makes you lovable and special to people, is that when people feel their sense of trust when they're talking to you, because you are truly who you are. There is no mask. And we are so used to wearing a mask in work, aren't we? That we put our, we hear people say it. I'm going to put my get into work mode. No, I would prefer that to me. And I'm going to get focused, I'm going to get disciplined. But what so many people do, and I don't know whether you've seen it in business, is they almost become somebody else in order to do the job, which isn't sustainable. Is that something you've witnessed?
Yeah, absolutely. And from my own point of view, I like to be as transparent as possible, and that's not a deliberate thing that I feel I have to put on every day when I start work. I just think that that's how I am naturally, and that can be quite a challenging thing to be when you work in local government, which I do, because politics is it can quite often not be a transparent business at all, and people have their own agendas. So me being transparent can be to my advantage. It can also at times not be an advantage because I'm too honest, maybe. But yeah, and when you ask me the question about is there anything that's off limits? Well, no, there isn't, because I don't think I've got any sort of skeletons and things. I'm happy to chat about anything, and my gut feel coming off that initial call was, I'm kind of excited to see where it leads, really. And there might be a bit of fun, there might be some challenging stuff in there, but I don't mind that.
There was something that you said before we pressed record. We were talking about when we do our own legwork, if you like. I was saying, I like to email people myself rather than have a marketing person do it on my behalf and pretend to be me. And I just like being that involved in my business and all the creative stuff. And you said something which I thought was just lovely. It's really great to see what you put your heart and soul into, where it reaches. And I think that's what today's conversation is about, is just opening our heart and soul up and just seeing where it reaches. And one of the things that we spoke about last week was what you do when you're not in your day job. Do you just want to share one of your that you think isn't so special, but it blew my socks off? What you do?
I think it's special in the sense of I really value what I do outside of work. I don't think it's special in terms of what I achieve. I'm proud of some of the things I achieve, but I always refer to it as both myself and my wife like spending time getting some of God's medicine, as we call it, fresh air.
Yeah.
And I think your own well-being is just exactly that. It's your own. So I think it's really important finding out what it is that works for you. So loads of people know that what I enjoy doing is being out in the fresh air, in the countryside, exploring, running, walking, but just being out in the countryside with friends and family. Now, if that doesn't float your boat, then that's not a problem to me at all. That's absolutely fine. What is a problem is if you can't find something that just allows you to switch off, recharge your batteries, and just have a brilliant time. I know what it is for me. I know what it is for my wife.
Well, let me just get straight into it. Tell me the thing that you do that is pretty athletic. Share that particular pastime.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been massively into sport ever since being a small boy, and my dad was exactly the same. He played squash. I followed him into squash, and I had an awful lot of great times playing that. But in the last 10 years or so of my life, I've much more got into running, and it started off small, doing things like local park runs, 5K around the Knaresmire in York and various other places. But I was always inspired as a child watching the London Marathon every year, and just the music in your head, and just seeing people of normality achieving amazing things. And I've got to do the London Marathon 5 times now, and I've done 70 other marathons and more. So ultra marathons, which is anything longer than a marathon, they're just an amazing challenge of you. And again, what I said before about just pushing yourself, and we can all achieve more than we think, whether that's running an ultra marathon through the night, over the hills in pitch black and navigating your way around and carrying on when your
Well,
body
just
tells you something else that you don't want to hear.
well, just tell us about your last experience then. Specifically, what was your last ultra marathon?
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I did something called the Lakeland 100, which ultra marathons are never what they say on the tin. So, despite the fact it's called the Lakeland 100, it's 105 miles, circular route from Coniston to Coniston, taking in one or two hills along the way. So 18,000 feet of climbing, something like that, and you get 40 hours to do it. And there's clearly a challenge in itself there. The distance, the fact that there's all that climbing to be done, the fact that it starts at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, so you're going straight into a night, and you're probably going to have to go into a second night as well, unless you're significantly skinnier and faster than me. And the weather, the Lake District has got its own microclimate from valley to valley, so there's all sorts of challenges coming at you. But it was the first time out of the 75 marathons I've done where I've had what they call a DNF, did not finish. And I stopped after 76 miles. And that's the balance again of saying, do I pat myself on the back for having done 76 miles, or do I beat myself up for not doing the 26 and a bit more to finish? And I know what I've been doing ever since.
Which one?
The latter. Just saying, why did I not finish? Why did I give up? And that's against the chorus of, why are you saying you gave up?
Well, don't you think, though, that we can give ourselves a hard time when we're in our good night's sleep, fresh clothes, our body's feeling good? That version of us is reflecting back and giving the courageous, inspirational, pushing through version of ourselves a hard time. Just go back a little bit so people can understand. When you're doing the 105, I'm fascinated that they round it down to 100. I'd be rounding up to 110. But are you expected to sleep in that time, or just to keep moving? What's the process, or what's expectation of either the organisers or yourself?
Yeah, personal choice, really. So the organisers, they give you an overall cut-off time, so you get 40 hours from 6 o'clock on the Friday night to finish the thing, and then there's numerous checkpoints within that, and most of those have got cut-off time. So if you're not there by the prescribed time, you are withdrawn from the race. So if you get, for example, the checkpoint that I stopped at mile 76, I was there something like 6 hours before the cutoff time. So my plan was to, I could have had a sleep if I wanted to, as long as you've got sufficient time within that cutoff. Actually being able to get to sleep when all hell is going on around you is a completely different challenge in itself. And being sat outside in a car park at the end of Haweswater in the lakes, in a gazebo that's been lifted off the ground because of the wind, and trying to fall asleep in there is a challenge I was unable to master, sadly.
And so, just going to mindset really in that particular ultramarathon, we'll talk about others. What was your mindset at the beginning, in the run up to it?
Yeah.
What was your mindset actually at the booking it point?
Yeah, at the booking it point, it's an interesting one. I have this conversation many a time with my wife. She knows what I'm like, but she's taken on umpteen challenges that have pushed her as well. So we do support each other. I know what she's comfortable with me taking on and what she's not comfortable with me taking on. I'm absolutely terrified of heights. So there's a race in Wales I would love to do, but I can't, because it goes over a range in Snowdonia that would absolutely petrify me. So I would never enter that. The booking it phase for me is a bit like, for many, booking your 2 weeks summer holiday. Just one of anticipation, excitement, can't wait. You're on permanent countdown to let's just get this thing going, please.
And then when you start the race, I'm really interested in what goes through your mind at the beginning.
Yeah, this is where I think there's a huge amount of similarities between running an ultra marathon and running a business, in terms of the planning and the training that's gone on beforehand and the teamwork and things like that. You can't you can't set off, or you can. I prefer not to. You can't set off at the start of a 105-mile race and think, right, I'm a mile in, I've got 104 miles to go. In the same way that if you were running a business, you'd break it down, you break your targets down into manageable objectives and put some milestones in place. So the fact that you've got 105 miles of a race and there are 14 checkpoints, I think, you break it down into 14 little races and you just run from checkpoint to checkpoint. So each checkpoint, there was around about 7 or 8 miles between them. So I'm just doing lots of 7 or 8 mile races and thinking, right, what do I need in terms of food, in terms of drink, in terms of what am I wearing to get to the next checkpoint, and then you just reassess. And you have your own little tools to do that. You know, I have a really expensive device that's basically, I think it was for this one, it was the cardboard off a used loo roll, where I just write down each of the checkpoints and what the cut-off times are of those and what the distances I've covered, and I just have those in a little plastic wallet, and I have them in the front of my pack, and each time I get to a checkpoint, I just have a look at them and double check, because as you get tired, your mind starts to get confused. So to have those there as a bit of a refresher just tells me, look, I've got to checkpoint 5 at, I don't know, 2 a.m. in the morning. The cut-off time was 6 a.m. Right, I've got plenty of time here. I can take a bit longer, get a bit more food. You know, maybe put my waterproof on if it's starting to rain, something like that. So just those little techniques to try and battle what's obviously going on, because physically you know you're going to get tired. You know you're going to get irritated with yourself or with somebody else. So you have to try and find mental strategies just to overcome that.
And when you're running, where's your mind at? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about memories, or are you absolutely in the zone of keeping your mind focused on things that are positive, so your body stays positive? There's a difference, isn't there, when you're running? If
Absolutely.
you're thinking about things that are on your mind and that are not particularly positive, then I think it weighs your body down and slows you down. And if you're thinking about things that are positive, then somehow you get another spring in your step. Is any of that true? I mean, it's my personal experience, not that I'm a runner, but when I've shuffled in my past, is that true for you?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's a few variable factors in there. So I think part of it depends on the terrain. So if you're running around a nice bit of flat tarmac, you can quite easily switch off because you're not too worried about where you're putting your feet.
Yeah.
If it's the middle of the night and you're halfway up a Wainwright Fell in the lakes, it's raining, that footpath has turned into a stream, and you may be going downhill, it's a bit difficult to think about other stuff because you've really got to look where you're putting your feet. And because, you know, one false move and you might break your ankle. And it happened at that race in the lakes. I saw it.
Yeah.
So if I can switch off, that's absolutely what I like to do, because it's fantastic when distance goes by and you don't even realize it's gone by. But it's also nice to be in a bit in the moment as well. I mean, again, for me, others may choose to disagree, but what a privilege it is to be able to run round the Lake District, the North Yorkshire Moors, wherever you might be, because it's a fantastic part of the world. The scenery is just incredible, even if it's raining cats and dogs, even if it's blowing a gale. It's just brilliant, and to go through the night and see the sunset rise see the sunrise is just incredible. So it's a balance. I think in the main, I try and like to switch off and think about anything else. I quite often do a lot of numbers, do a lot of math stuff in my brain, trying to work out different things linked to the race. But you need a little bit in the moment as well. Just I think mostly to make sure where you're putting your feet when you're off road, because it can be challenging.
Oh, I can imagine. When I went to Base Camp Everest in October last year, it had unprecedented rain with 11 days of rain. And of course, as you can imagine, it's cobbled. No, but it's not cobbled. It's uneven rocks on a and water running down it and mud running down it. And that amount of focus we had to put to where our feet were going was incredible. I mean, it was brain aching, but it also meant that your focus couldn't be anywhere else. You couldn't be having any disruptive internal dialogue or stories running in your mind. You just had to completely focus, because where you put your foot was critical. Because if you're injured, there's two ways off: helicopter or horse. And taking a horse down those cobbles is not for anybody's sanity. So lots of people doing that. But when you when you decided to not finish the race, how long were you thinking, I'm not going to finish this? And what was going through your mind? Because I'm really interested if you're willing to be really transparent about what you were saying to yourself, because I'll bet my life that everybody listening will have had this moment in their lives.
I don't ever think I had the thought of I'm not going to finish. It was more a thought of I don't want to, and it's quite a different thing, really. And you're right. It's never an immediate decision. It sort of creeps up on you over a period of time. And that could be the same in business as well. That could be the same as someone deciding to sell the business or deciding to retire or leave or whatever. It's not usually one thing. It's a culmination of things. So, I forget where we were. I'd obviously been going since 6 o'clock on the Friday evening. The weather during the night had been typical of the lakes. It'd been very wet, and I don't mind that, because waterproof kit these days is very, very good. So there is a saying that there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just the wrong choice of clothes. Yeah. So I was fine with
Just
that.
let me ask you this question: what day are you on? So you started at 6 p.m. on the Friday. What day are you on?
So I'm now sort of mid-afternoon on the Saturday. So been going about 21 hours, something like that.
And you'd covered 76 miles in 21 hours.
Well, about 22 hours for the 76, but in terms of when the thoughts about I want to stop, not I'm not going to finish, it's I want to stop, started happening. It was probably I was around Ullswater, and in Ullswater, for those people who know it, there was a checkpoint in a place called Howtown, and I was absolutely fine there. The problem is between Howtown and the next checkpoint at a place called Mardale Head is you go over this goddamn awful hill called Fusedale, and it just goes on and on and on. And at the same time as there's a 100-mile race, there's a 50-mile race at the same time, and those guys set off halfway around our course a couple of hours before I'd arrived there. So I've got these 50 ladies and gents all streaming past me because they're a lot fresher than I am and going a lot quicker. And I've just got this horrible hill that just goes on and on and on forever. And then you get down the other side to Haweswater. It's single track. It's ferns on either side. It's really difficult to overtake, and it's wet rock and it's slippy, and your ankles are doing all sorts of horrible things. And I was tired. Of course I was tired, because I'd done 76 miles. You're going to be tired, whoever you are. It's not the tiredness, it's not the fatigue in my legs that bothers me. What was bothering me was the fact I just wanted to go to sleep. I was desperate to go to sleep, and I got to the next checkpoint, and all I wanted to do there, because I knew I had loads of time in hand. I'm not there to win these things. I'm nowhere near good enough to win those things. I wanted to sit down and I wanted to go to sleep for however long that was going to be. I managed to nod off, and I was immediately woken up by a medic who said he needs to make sure I'm all right, so he wasn't going to let me nod off. I know, like I said before, I was in a gazebo that was outside. It was blowing a gale. The gazebo was lifting off. There were other people around me in far worse states than I was. And you look at me and you think, actually, that bloke looks all right. But I'd talked myself into it, and I'd created a rationale that made sense. He's done 76 miles. What a good effort that is. There's no shame in that. And I just want to go to sleep. I wasn't injured, anything at all. I just wanted to go to sleep. That's all it was.
I love that. I talked myself into it and then created the rationale. And I love that depth of honesty, because some people would still be in the defense of their decision rather than what began their decision. And it's a bit like going to the loo on a night out. I'm guessing I haven't been on a night out for such a long time, but when you go, you don't stop. And so, and I guess with the thinking, once the thought opens the door, it reveals a whole other room of thinking that supports the door that's been opened, doesn't it? And yeah, I think what if you'd had your sleep and then thought, I'll have a sleep and then I'll decide? Do you think the decision might have been different? Or did you think in order to sleep, you needed to have made a decision so you could rest?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know is the answer. And it's not the first time in long distance races that I've had these sorts. I've done 100-mile races before and finished them. When I told the official that I wanted to stop, the first thing he said was, I'm going to ask you 3 times whether you want to stop or not, because I want you to be sure that you're sure. I had other people offering to walk with me. I knew that the first thing out of that checkpoint was another big hill coming out of Mardale, and I had 18 hours to do 26 miles. That's a huge amount of time to cover that distance, and I'd convinced myself that I didn't want to do it. But neither was I going to say, "Oh, I'd hurt myself and live off the sympathy from people." I wasn't, like I say, I wasn't injured. I just wanted to go to sleep, and that was the decision I made.
Yeah. Yeah. How does that, do you think, relate to our mindsets in business? Because, and the great thing is you've got free choice. It's your hobby. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. There's 2 questions I've got running. One's about business, and then one's about something a bit more personal, I guess, that's not yet formed in my mind. But how do you think that particular mindset, of which, like you say, it's pretty incredible, you did 76 miles in 22 hours?
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? In business, we're ingrained, aren't we, by things on the TV and the media and peers as well, to say that if you own a business, the sole objective should be to grow that business and just make more money. And it's an utter load of nonsense as far as I'm concerned. But I'm a bit like that with my races. It's go further, go longer, go harder, that type of thing. But if you're running a business and it happens to be you and it's your business, as long as you're generating sufficient income to provide the lifestyle that you want, why should you bow to that outward pressure to recruit someone else, try and grow that business? Because actually that's a risk, and it might not be the risk you want to take. And we can't all be the CEO, can we? The CEO needs a team of people around them, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a sole trader who's generating sufficient profitability to provide a lifestyle and providing tax to deliver services locally. FSB would love me for saying that, but I fundamentally believe it.
It's music to my ears, actually.
Yeah, and the vast majority of businesses in York and North Yorkshire are small businesses. Less than 10 employees. It's 90 odd % plus of the volume of businesses in our region are those small businesses. So you aggregate all those together, and they make a far bigger contribution than those massive employers who we know. But yeah, those are the ones who grab the headlines, as they would a Nestle or an Aviva or an NHS or McCain, whoever it would be, all huge successful employers. But actually, the aggregate impact of all those micro businesses is huge, and it gives us that diversity within the region that I think makes North Yorkshire just a fantastic place to be, really.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that you see smaller businesses make?
Yeah, good question. I think sometimes not appreciating um the skill that it takes to run a business and not doing your groundwork properly. Um, I used to have many a conversation with people wanting to. The example I always use: I want to open a coffee shop in York. Fantastic, that's fine, but not understanding that actually there's dozens and dozens and dozens of very successful coffee shops already in that location, providing a great product, and you cannot charge £3.50 for a cup of hot brown liquid without everything else that comes with it. You've got to have you've got to have a point of differentiation. You've got to have fantastic customer service. You've got to have great premises, and you've got to be good on social media. There's so many things in that, and if you're not prepared to do that, then you may well come unstuck. But I love the enthusiasm of people wanting to set up in business, because I've never done it. I've never been in a position to do it. So I do respect anybody who wants to at least try. But if you are going to try, do yourself a favour by doing your research, talking to your networks. Don't just talk to your mum and your dad and your family, because they're all probably going to tell you it's a great idea, and go for it. But if you're risking your money, then you want to try and protect that best you can.
Simon, if you were hypothetically going to set up a business, say nothing was any problem, age, weight, height, money, charisma, nothing was any problem, what would you set up?
Yeah, I've always thought about this, and the really easy answer I always come back with is the really highly exciting initiative of setting up a car park, because there's minimal work required. You just sit there, and the money comes rolling in, and I'm being a bit disingenuous. Something where you get some sort of recurring income. You see people, don't they, who they run a business, but they've got property in the background where they're obviously getting the rental income from that. But yeah, a nice little patch of land in the centre of York somewhere that people needed, and I didn't have I had enough time to go and do what I like doing outside of work that we've already talked about. So that'd be perfect.
And then if you were to look into your, I guess, childhood, your upbringing, what do you think played? What do you think played the biggest contribution into who you are today?
Yeah, we all have. I think our childhood shapes a lot of us, don't they? And we spoke the other day about mine. Um, my characteristics come very much from my parents. My love of sport, and not just watching it, but actually getting involved in it, absolutely comes from my dad. I'm competitive, he is, and I know that's where it comes from. I think in terms of my characteristics, I'm laid back, and that can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that I don't let a lot of stuff bother me. I'm naturally optimistic, and that comes from my mum for definite. And like I mentioned the other day, I lost my mum when I was 15. I woke up on a Saturday morning, and she'd sadly died during the night. And my view that formed after that was nothing else in life can hurt me. And I've always said, unless it was my kids or my wife that could hurt me like that did. So anything else would always be manageable, because I survived what happened to my mum. So therefore, anything else by comparison will be less impactful. And whether that's true, that's why I'm as laid back as I am, and I'm as optimistic as I am, I don't know. But there seems to, I'm no psychologist or anything like that. But there must be a connection between what happened then, and how I've been since.
What in your thinking? What is your, if Now, I know nothing's off the table and I don't want to be intrusive, but if you were to have a barrier in the way that you think at times, what would that be? It's always so good to know what are my limiting thoughts that I manage my life around. Um, do you have one particular one that shows up? I mean, I do. Do you?
Um, I don't. I don't know. I mean, certainly in terms of, if I break it down into sort of work and non-work, in terms of work, I've always been quite challenging of myself when I've looked at applying for jobs. You know, there's plenty of jobs I haven't applied for in the past because I've really thought to myself, actually, I don't think I can do that. Whereas there'd be plenty of people who say, well, just apply for it and work out how to do it later on. In terms of outside of work with the running stuff, it's like I said before, the limiting factor for me is my fear of heights. I'd quite happily enter. Well, there's a 200-mile race that a friend of mine organises. I'd quite happily enter that because I know that there's no exposure at height to it. But if there was a 5-mile race that took me over a really narrow mountain ridge, there's no way you'd get me doing that. So that's a definite limiting factor. But you know, aside from that, I don't think there is. You know, I'm just happy. Well, both of us. When I talk about my wife as well, we're really happy with our lot. You know, we're not chasing money. You know, we're just chasing quality of life, and that's what our key driver is really.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got two more questions before we finish. One is, what is the single most significant thing that businesses do that leads to success? You can think about it.
No, the first answer that comes to the top of my head is the way they treat people. That's a massive one for me. And I remember I used to work in banking for a long time, and I remember when we had senior execs would visit, usually from London, and you'd see people's approach to them changed. And I'm thinking, hang on, you're not like that with everyone else, yet you've changed. And my view's always been, we're all people, whether you're Alan Sugar or whether you're me, we're all people at the end of the day, and we should treat each other right. So I love seeing those businesses where they treat people with respect and they recognise their contribution, because whether you're the finance director or whether you're the office cleaner, you are all playing a role in the success of that business. So people and the way you treat them I think is a huge thing.
Yeah. And then I think my last question is from me is, what impact do you want to have made in your lifetime on this planet?
I just hope, you know, between the things I've done in work and you know, the stuff I've done outside work, where I've obviously done the running stuff, I've set up running events and put them on in the village I live in. I've volunteered in the prison sector and run with inmates there, and all the help I've given to businesses. I'd just be really happy if people thought, yeah, he's a nice bloke, just trying to do his best. And if I can't help people, I can't help them. You know, I'm not the brains of Britain. I'm just an honest bloke trying my best to make a difference. And if you take one thing from me, then brilliant. And if people remember that I was just an honest, nice person who was trying the best to make a difference, then I'm happy with that.
And what question would have been brilliant for me to ask that I haven't asked?
That's an awful question. Is that? It's not awful as in it's awful. It's just an awful question. I think it's really hard, isn't it? What question would you like me to ask that you haven't asked? Do you know? I don't know. It's like I said, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I did say, look, I'm quite happy to talk about anything. So that makes you think, well, what haven't you asked? I suppose the one thing I would say, and I'll kind of answer it before you ask it. You know, we obviously talked about the lakes. The question would be what happens next as a result of that, and on that day we were mid Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon, something like that. I was never ever going back to that race ever again. That was me done. Within 24 hours, I was like, yeah, when does it open for entry next year? I'm going. Well, it's not guaranteed you get a place. It's very, very popular, but I'll be absolutely filling that application form out and explaining why I needed to go back and put it to bed, really.
And I love that. What will you do differently on the next race? Or is it what will you think differently? Is there any doing differently that needs to be done? Or is it any thinking differently that you would like to do?
Yeah, there is. And again, this is the link between that type of activity and running a business. There's so many parallels. There's always learning in every experience. There's always learning. And you've kind of got to be big enough and open enough to accept that sometimes you actually made a mistake. I know exactly where I made a mistake on that race, and that could have been the thing that cost me, and it was a stupid bloody mistake that I made. I should know better.
What was it? We're dying to
Well,
know.
it was you go through you're just beyond halfway, and you go through the point Dalemain, it's called, the point where the 50-mile runners start. So you come into there, and all these 50-mile runners are getting ready to set off. They welcome you in like you're some sort of Olympic champion, which is just fantastic and awe-inspiring. And you go into a marquee where you've had a bag with all your change of kit and whatever else you want to take into there. There's no such thing as male and female changing. It's just one big open marquee. So I've got a full change of kit, and someone had said, take a toothbrush and brush your teeth because that'll be really good. So I was stood there brushing my teeth, and I thought, yeah, okay, that's great. I was very delicately balancing a towel around my waist, and so as not to offend any ladies who were in the room.
Protect your modesty.
Changing my full kit. They were doing exactly the same. And you know what? People couldn't have cared less, to be honest. You know, they're far more interested in what was going on than seeing whatever else was on display. I had, and again, it's a completely technical thing, but it made a massive difference. You know, all my kit I had on was obviously wet through by then, so to get it off and change it was just brilliant. I had a spare long sleeved running top in my bag to carry with me, and I forgot to put it in, left it behind. So coming into Mardale Head where I stopped, I'd got a short sleeve t-shirt on and my waterproof over the top. So the minute I stopped to start having my debate with myself around do I or don't I just started getting cold, and I was looking for the long sleeve top to put on to try and warm myself up. It wasn't there, and that, whether that was something to do with fatigue, I don't know, but it was a stupid mistake to have left that behind. So I won't be doing that next time. But I think just having the sort of knowledge of the course, knowing, you know, it's all well and good knowing that the hills are going to be proper hills, but you can't actually beat having seen them and done them for yourself. And sometimes you don't see them because it's pitch black, so it's maybe no bad thing. Yeah, I don't think I can be better prepared. It's just that you never say you're never going to make a mistake, but having made it once, I'll be much more aware of it next time round.
I wonder, if you don't mind me offering, I wonder though whether a big part of it was entertaining the thinking of I don't want to go any further. And then once that thought had entered your mind, so did the other thoughts that then justified and rationalized stopping. So I wonder if as well, just being really aware that if that thought comes in, I'll park it. So if the thought of I don't want to go any further comes in, just say, I'll just see how I feel at the next checkpoint. I wonder if that having what you're thinking in your toolkit as well as what you're wearing in your toolkit might just be a marginal gain.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'll have you on speed dial for next year. The only problem being there's no reception at Mardale Head.
That's all right. I'll do some hypnosis on you, and I'll be
Yeah,
permanently in your head.
yeah. It comes back to what I said right at the start, and it's about you approach things in the same way as business. You approach things by breaking it down into smaller milestones. So what was stopping me just saying, do you know what? I've got so many hours to play with it. I'm just going to crack on. And see what happens. And again, you're right. You start to think, well, actually, I'm really tired. I want to go to sleep. I'm getting cold because I've stupidly forgot to put this long sleeve top in my bag. It's not far off getting dark again, and you're compiling a list of negativity almost, and the positive thoughts have just gone completely.
Well, the mind finds evidence to support a decision. So that's what you were doing. But I wonder if in part of your mindset at the beginning was, I'm going to accommodate having a sleep. And so I'm going to build it in round about that point. So when it comes, it isn't like sleep means the end. It means, oh no, that's part of the
just a break. Yeah. Pause and reset. Yeah.
Simon, here I am, backseat driver. I'm more than aware of, but just listening to what you were saying and what your success model seems to be, and what the parts that then kind of got into the tiny weeny crack. Whether you, in my view, and I'm sure anybody that's listening's view, is what an inspiration that this is how you choose to spend your spare time, and just that you're embracing all of what you are and what you've got fully rather than taking it for granted. Like your body can still move and you're still moving it. You've got this wonderful attitude that you're embracing, that you're enjoying being. You know what's important to you in your life. You boundary it, you prioritize it, your children, your wife, your love of your owning your own well-being and health. I just think it's all, whilst we might think it's simple, don't we? In fact, Stevie Ward said in the other podcast, man sacrifices health for wealth, and then as they get older, they have to sacrifice wealth for health. And
completely. I went to the Tate Modern in London on Friday with my son, Friday last week. Most people who know me will know me and Art aren't the best friends. We don't get on. But anyway, one thing I saw there, the piece of art, it just said on the wall, it was a dozen or so words. We are the creator of our own misery. Is that art? I've no idea whether that's art or not. But actually, it resonates, and I prefer the reverse of that. We're the creator of our own enjoyment. And yeah, whether it's rugby league, whether it's running, whether it's just being in your garden or whatever it is, I think the important thing is knowing what it is that does it for you. What that thing actually is, I don't think makes any difference whatsoever. You've got to get some enjoyment out of it, some ability just to switch off and just get lost in the moment that works. And once you've found that, keep hold of it, because it's valuable stuff.
I love that. It's a good place to finish, because I think that quite often what we're doing is going for the grass is always greener, going for the next thing, and we're letting go of something that is already currently very fulfilling and nurturing and nourishing and valuable, to risk it for the next thing. What is it we're searching for if we're moving to the next thing and the next thing? What is it that's not being filled up? Oh, Simon, what a brilliant way to start a week. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
sharing your heart and soul, as we said right at the beginning. And let's just see where it reaches. And I would love anybody that's listened to this podcast today to give it a star rating. Also share it with anybody that you think it will resonate with, and give us any comments. So from my heart to yours, Simon, thank you and have an amazing week.
You too, Lisa. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed it.